Coming up, Joel Embiid dropped a big game on the Boston Celtics, and two of the best offenses in the NBA met last night on the hardwood. You're listening in to Locked On Now.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
You're listening into Locked On Now NBA. I'm your host, Nate Dickinson. Thanks for making the show your first listen every weekday, Monday through Friday. As always, our Locked On NBA hosts are in to help us recap everything that you may have missed from around the league on Monday. Let's start in Utah, where on paper, the Jazz and Hornets are two of the best offensive teams in the league, so we were sure to see some fireworks on Monday night. Our Locked On Jazz host, David Locke, recaps what was a big Jazz win at home.
The biggest game.
When the number one offensive team and the number two offensive team in the NBA go head-to-head, you're certain to get a defensive battle. That's what the Utah Jazz won tonight at Vivint Arena as they beat the Hornets 112-102. David Locke of Locked On Jazz. The Jazz are the number one offense in the NBA going up against the 30th ranked defense in the Charlotte Hornets. But after a 35-point first quarter, the Jazz offense never clicked in until the final 4 minutes of the game when they finally surged ahead of the Hornets, who had whittled away a 22-point Jazz advantage from the first quarter. Rudy Gobert had his sixth ever double-double of the game, shooting his best free throw shooting ever at 15 of 16 from the line while scoring 23 points and 21 rebounds. Bogdanovich with 23 and Donovan with 21. Jazz closed the game on a 12-2 flurry after relenting a 22-point first quarter lead. For more on this, go to Locked On Jazz.
Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers traveled to Boston to face off against the Celtics Monday night, and Embiid brought his A game. He dropped 41 points on Boston to hand them a loss at home, and Locked On Celtics was live from the Garden postgame to recap.
Hey there, John Corrales here from the Locked On Celtics podcast here at the TD Garden, where the Boston Celtics fall 108-103 to the Sixers. They had a 97-90 lead, but they go scoreless for nearly 3 minutes, more than 3 minutes without a field goal. And the Sixers made the hustle plays, an offensive rebound that becomes a Matisse Thybulle three. They flip around an offensive foul on Jason Tatum into Joel Embiid free throws, which he took 14 of them. And instead of the Celtics up 7 with the ball and 4 minutes to go, they were up 2, and it became a game, and the Sixers executed down the stretch. The Celtics could not, and this is a real crushing loss for them. Shorthanded or not, they still had enough talent on the floor. Most of their starters, basically their regular starting lineup, minus Enes Kanter in for Robert Williams, who was a late scratch due to personal reasons. This is going to be a tough one for the Celtics to swallow. Meanwhile, Joel Embiid just goes completely nuts, hitting every jumper that he wanted to take. He really didn't bowl his way to the basket like you would normally expect Embiid to do, but Enes Kanter just couldn't challenge those jump shots. He got going early. They kind of let him step into some warm-up type jumpers. They started to fall, and he just stayed hot for the rest of the game. So this is a tough loss for the Celtics. I'm going to talk about it on the Locked On Celtics podcast. So make sure you are subscribed and watch the show on YouTube.
The Memphis Grizzlies lost at home yesterday. That's a problem for Memphis fans to worry about later. For them, it was much more about the return of Ja Morant. He dropped 16 points in the loss, and Locked On Grizzlies has the full recap on everything he and Memphis did last night.
He's back. That's right. Ja Morant made his triumphant return to the Memphis Grizzlies lineup tonight, nearly a month after going out of the lineup due to a knee injury against the Atlanta Hawks the Friday after Thanksgiving, and also being health and safety protocols. The Grizzlies were glad to welcome him back, and Ja was getting back to being his old self, 16 points and 8 rebounds on what should have been a special night with his 150th career game and Desmond Bane's 100th career game on the same night. But unfortunately, despite the fact the Grizzlies had 17 more shot attempts than the Thunder, despite the fact that the Grizzlies had 17 offensive rebounds, scored 18 more points than the Thunder in the paint and 21 points off of turnovers. The Grizzlies still lost 102-99. This truly was an inexplicable loss. One of the big reasons why the Grizzlies lost was because they couldn't hit their shots, and the Thunder had 15 more free throw attempts, and thus they had 9 more free throws made, which was the difference in the game. Desmond Bane, an outstanding effort, 23 points, 3 threes on the night, 26 points, 5 threes on the night. Get my numbers right here in a second. An outstanding game and what has been an outstanding run for Desmond Bane. In 10 of his last 17 games, he's made 4 or more threes in 10 of those games. So an outstanding run for him. But the Grizzlies now have had 2 pretty disappointing losses in a row after winning 10 of their previous 11. While they still have certainly had a better December than anybody could have expected, they now are going to run into a pretty hard schedule coming up with both the Warriors and the Suns awaiting them over the next week. It certainly will be something to watch. We'll have this and much more, including celebrating the career milestones in terms of games for Ja and Desmond Bane on the postgame edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast.
Finally, the Chicago Bulls had lost to the Houston Rockets, one of the few Houston wins this season earlier in the year. But Chicago got its revenge at home on Monday night, and Locked On Bulls has everything you need to know from that revenge win.
What's up, Bulls Nation? Matt Peck here from Locked On Bulls with your post-game takeaway. The Bulls avenged their earlier loss this season to the Rockets, which kicked off that unlikely Rockets winning streak. They beat Houston tonight 133-118, the final. And a night after DeMar DeRozan was the story in the win over the Lakers, tonight it was all about the Bulls bench, which even when this roster has been healthy, has struggled to contribute on the offensive end this season. 66 points from the Bulls reserves tonight. Kobe White led that group with 24, his season high and his best game this season by far. Kobe has been struggling to find a rhythm, only got in a few games after coming off that offseason shoulder surgery before going into health and safety protocols. Kobe was aggressive tonight, and he was knocking down his threes. And how about Alfonso McKinney, who earlier today signed his second consecutive 10-day contract to stay with the Bulls? He chipped in with 16 points. The Bulls get the victory. They go to 19-10 on the season and secure their spot for second place in the Eastern Conference. For a full breakdown of this Bulls win over the Rockets, check out our episode tomorrow with me and my guy, Big Dave, wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Bulls, your team every day.
That's all for us here on Locked On Now NBA. Thanks for making the show your first listen every weekday. Now that you're done here, be sure to head on over to Locked On NBA and your team's local Locked On podcast. Until tomorrow, I'm Nate Dickinson, Locked On Now NBA.